my name is Emma. I'm an artist and DIYer. Welcome to my channel. I am actually best known for my upcycling. If you didn't know, I kind of started my social media journey on TikTok. That's where I have a large majority of my followers, and most of them I got from sharing my upcycling. I don't plan on sharing a ton of it here because it's hard to recreate and I want my YouTubes to be recreatable for the most part, but for this video, I'm going to be showing you how I turned an old Altoid tin into a watercolor kit. This was actually for a series that I started and planned on keeping to TikTok where I upcycle Altoid tins. I have a ton of them. I have no idea where they're from. I'm not sure if they were my parents or if someone gave them to me at some point, but I have a bunch of them. I did actually upcycle one, and there is one on my YouTube in my gift ideas YouTube. One of those YouTubes, I'll try to link it below, but if you want to see another one of my Altoid upcycles, it is over there. This one initially was supposed to be for TikTok, but it was actually quite lengthy and a little bit complicated, so I decided I would add it to YouTube. I wanted to create this video so you could really see the ins and outs of how I made this portable watercolor kit. It turned out so cute, and the best part, it's super functional. I would definitely feel comfortable giving this to someone or using it for a trip. It's adorable and it includes everything that you need. And here is how I made it. The first thing you'll need is an old Altoid tin. It doesn't have to be specifically Altoids, again, that's just what I have, and some polymer clay. Here I'm using some Sculpey 3 because it's cheap, but doesn't have to be that brand. I'm rolling it out to about maybe like 1/8 of an inch, and then I flipped it over and cut it to the exact size of the tin. And this step also doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just gonna smush it in there and be moving a lot of things around anyway, so no need for perfection here. I then took some of the scraps and added a little bit more clay to them and rolled them out, and then I'm going to use 2 long strips along the long way and 3 shorter strips to make separate areas that I'm going to be putting the watercolors. I also added some of those strips along the edges as well, and then this is the fun part, this is my favorite part of the whole thing. I just use my fingers to smush everything down, so I'm going to try to keep those ridges there, but I want them to end up being seamless. So I did this for quite some time. It is a ton of fun until I got this smooth effect. And then I popped it in the oven at 275 for 30 minutes. And while that was baking, I prepared my little sheets of paper. I grabbed some watercolor paper and measured them out. I did end up having to cut these a little bit shorter. I would go probably even smaller than this. So you can see I'm cutting them, and then I ended up having to cut a little bit off the edge, and I'll include the measurements in the description box, but you can also do your own measurements. I happen to have this tape that's for bookbinding from a coloring book I did at some point, so I use that, but you certainly don't have to. I think any old masking tape will do. And this is what I use to secure them together, and I'm actually able to kind of pull a piece out every time I want to use one. I also ended up cutting a brush to make it fit inside the tin. You don't have to do this step, but I thought it would be really cute and kind of professional if I sanded the edge and painted it black so it looked like it was meant to be that size. Once the tin was done, I removed it from the oven, and I realized the clay had shrunken just a little bit, so it was kind of shaking around, so I was able to pull it out a tiny bit and added some E6000 on a few of the edges, and then just kind of shoved it back in there to stop it from moving around. That step isn't totally necessary, but it helps. And then I took some clear acrylic paint, and this step is totally necessary because this is what's going to seal that clay to make it possible to wipe the watercolor off. And then I used some black spray paint to coat the edges. Now you can leave it as is, but I don't really like the impression of the Altoid that you can still see, so my dad actually had some scrap leather lying around. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to. You can use another fabric, totally up to you, but this is what I had, and I thought it would look really classy with some leather. So I sprayed it and let it dry overnight to flatten it out, and then I cut it to the size that I needed with a box cutter and used that box cutter to also cut the edges too to give them that rounded look. But you could use felt, you could use cardboard, whatever you want to cover the Altoids, and this is totally an optional and only aesthetic step as well. And I used a lighter to get rid of the little fibers on the edges, and also practice precaution with that step. I used some E6000 to attach it, and I let that sit for a bit. After I glued it, I realized the edges were a little light, so I used a Sharpie to cover them up. And then for the inside, I glued in my little pad of paper with some hot glue. And then I just had these liquid watercolors. I'm sure you can get these at any craft store. And I started with my primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. I also then added some black, some brownish, I don't remember the color, and then some green. And to make it look a little bit nicer, I took a brush and kind of smushed it flat, obviously wiping my brush off in between, and it just gave it a little bit more of a professional look. But that step is completely optional. As you can tell, I'm just kind of smushing it around and making it look nice and pretty. Next, I got these little glass containers from Dollar Tree, and I thought this would be perfect to store some water. So I took a magnet, glued it with some E6000, and that's what I'm going to use to store some water. And here is the finished result. I think it is so cute. I thought I would show you kind of a little example of it being used. So I decided to paint a little landscape painting. So feel free to watch me and enjoy. The cleanup for this is also really easy. You can dump the water out or put it back, and then I just took a wet paper towel and it wipes right off for the mixing. So it is so nice and so easy to take on the go. And that is it. I love how it turned out, and my favorite part is how functional it is. Because we sealed that clay, you can reuse it over and over again, and the cleanup is so easy. The watercolor just wipes right off. You have some alternatives for this too. You can fill all of them with watercolor if you plan on just bringing a pad of paper separately. You don't have to paint on those teeny tiny things. You could just use it to transport your watercolors. You could bring separate brushes, whatever you want. If you do that, you can, instead of including that little thing of paper, you can mix your paint right where the paper was on that top lid. So totally up to you, however you want to do it. I just stuck with some primary colors, and that's just what I had. Eventually that will dry each time I use it, so I'm not too worried about a mess. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this helpful and informative. If you did, make sure you give it a like, follow me on here, and feel free to check out my TikTok for my upcycles and some other content. And let me know if you have any ideas for what you want to see with other Altoid tints. I'm not sure if I'll post them on here, but if you have a great idea and you want to see it on here, I'm more than happy to. I have so many more fun videos for you. This was just a quick little teaser, but make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and happy making.